Welcome to Logistics Unplugged. My name is Brian Blalock, and I'm your host, and I'm happy to jump in today to all things logistics. So let's pull back the curtain, take a look under the hood, and have a great discussion. And I am beyond thrilled today to have joining us our Director of Parcel Services, Lis Miller. Lis, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me today, Brian.
You're absolutely welcome. So, we're going to get into the topic, but before we do that, we always like to get to know our guests a little bit and understand a little bit about the history, the background. And I promise I'll try to keep the bad questions to a minimum. But tell me a little bit about where you came from, how you got into logistics. Give me a little bit of that roadmap, and feel free to take that back as far as you want. Birth might be a little bit too far, but somewhere along the path, you can just pick it up from there.
Sure. Actually, oddly enough, I started as a customer, managing a group of dental laboratories.
Oh, wow.
Back prior to 2010. So I'm not going to go too deep into the dental lab history, but there's some dental work that goes to China. Not any longer since digital dentistry has been invented.
Okay.
But at the time, we were a large international shipper. I was one of FedEx's largest shippers. And there was this mindset that ground shipments went through UPS and air shipments went on FedEx. And no one had ever looked at combining the two within the company. So that's where things kind of started for me as I negotiated out contracts with the carriers, ended up picking a winner, and the winner ended up being FedEx.
Okay.
Over the years, my relationship grew with FedEx, and at one point in time when an opening happened on the FedEx team, it seemed like a good move for me to take a job with a pension.
I like it.
A little more. So that was my actual entrance into all things. And you think you know parcel shipping when you're a customer, but then when you actually get into the carrier side of things, it's so involved.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you actually came from being on the customer side and having to negotiate there. And I promise not to make the bad joke, but I probably will a little bit about you cutting your teeth on that because, the whole dental thing. But so starting there and learning it from that side probably gives you a completely different perspective when it's time to negotiate on behalf of someone else. Right?
It does. And even just dealing with customers because you understand their side more than just the sales side.
Okay.
So
I think that's fair. And I didn't want to take you completely to birth, but I'm always curious when folks are deciding when they're very young, when you're a kid, when you're envisioning, if I could wave the wand today and do whatever, be whatever I wanted to be, was there anything in there that was, that you always got the firemen, the superheroes? What'd you want to be when you were a kid?
I think I wanted to be a lawyer.
Lawyer? I'm a lawyer. Wait a minute. I think I heard that on a TV show somewhere.
My husband can confirm I argue about everything, and I love to research, so I always can back up my arguments.
I like it. And
I don't know that he agrees. But
I do like all the lawyer shows, and I have had some really good attorneys over the years. So I only joke, but that is interesting to go from wanting to be a lawyer to being in our complex world of logistics. But we're glad you're here. And we're going to talk all things logistics today, but we're going to veer for just a second. I've kind of had this as a little icebreaker in some of these discussions, and we talk about entertainment that involves our industry, right? And I think I've beat the music part of it to death, so I won't go down the favorite trucking song. But is there any movie that had any shipping or trucking or anything unique that you could gravitate to that you thought was interesting?
shipping movies. The only thing that comes to mind, and it's not directly related to actual logistics, but Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh, wow.
Might be one of my all-time favorite movies.
I guess that could be a parcel delivery guy. He's
It's ocean freight.
definitely doing some expedite. Yeah,
Next day air.
I like it. I like it. You know, we were talking before we started today, and I went very old school, and I won't say how old, but I can remember a show when I was a little kid called BJ and the Bear, and it was actually a truck driver who went all around the country, and he had a monkey that he took with him. Now, I'm sure PETA might not have been a big fan of that, but I think he was treated pretty well because I saw some of the meals he got in the truck stops, and they looked better than some of the ones I was getting at the time. So BJ and the Bear would be my TV show, and I still think Smokey and the Bandit's got to be my all-time on the movie side. But that's that part of it. So we know a little bit about Liz. We know where she came from. We know she wanted to be a lawyer, not a superhero. And although there's some pretty good lawyers out there. So let's talk a little bit about the state of parcel right now. Talk about what's going on in the industry. Anything new, anything different that you're seeing on the horizon?
There's tons going on across the logistics, across all logistics right now. Parcel, I feel like, is being defined, at least for me, is pre-COVID and post-COVID. Yeah. There was this period of time where we went through a phase and Amazon 2-day was just becoming a thing. It was a race to the bottom, trying to get things as fast as possible. And then there wasn't as much online shipping that there was in 2020. And then you have COVID happen. That caused shipping, it was a projection of 4-year growth to happen in 3 months' time.
Oh, wow.
So the peak that was hit in 2020 wasn't expected until 2024, those volumes. And so obviously we know there was tons of capacity constraints and restrictions. Things have leveled off, even though there's still growth in the industry that's larger than was projected prior to 2019. I think where everything's going, and this is across all fronts, is Gen AI. Everyone's talking about AI, how we're going to automate front end, back end, what can we do smarter, and how can we improve upon not only rates, but also just how we're achieving the data. Sharing more data is becoming more prevalent. 10 years ago, asking for data was pulling teeth, no pun intended.
No pun intended.
And now I think that everyone's realizing that data out is only going to be as good as the data that you get in.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And finding any shortcut to get you there, you can't fix anything you can't measure. And I've always found that one of the most interesting things, even though, and very excited to see what you're going to do with integrating small pack into a larger 3PL, but looking at orders instead of looking at shipments has always been interesting to me, and understanding that there is the smallest component of what happens in business, which is someone's individual order, someone's individual purchase, and then determining what type of mode should get it from A to Z, and having access to all of those so that we can break it down from the smallest to the largest and use, I'm sure, a variety of different purchasing techniques or shipping techniques, whether it's zone skipping or any of the
Well, even 10 years ago, TMS platforms didn't exist for parcel. I mean, they existed, but they were few and far between. Most customers had a UPS shipping computer, a FedEx shipping computer, and dynamic rating was rating both shipments on 2 different computers and seeing who was the cheapest. So, you go from that to really there weren't other carriers even in the market. UPS and FedEx were the dominant. Even USPS wasn't a huge player in the package market until recently, and now regionals are accounting for almost 10% of the total shipping in the United States. So we're seeing these regional carriers popping up that are covering a good majority of the United States. Final mile carriers that are utilizing gig drivers like Uber Freight, and local drivers that are already making deliveries with Instacart and everything are delivering packages. They're already covered under the insurance.
Yeah.
And so you're getting shipments from retail companies that are shipping from store rather than distribution centers. The whole model's changed. And I think we're going to see that continue to evolve as shipping gets smarter. I think those large retail stores that originally kept their retail storefronts separate from their distribution centers are now bringing that back in-house, trying to make retail relevant again.
Sure.
Shipping from store covers a larger percent of the population in a shorter amount of time, which correlates to cheaper shipping rates across the board.
Absolutely.
And then your small to medium shippers, the boom that we've seen in e-commerce, it's so easy to get a website, create a shopping cart, and start selling a product almost overnight. It's pretty incredible.
I think that's exciting. You brought up some things I never even thought about. Like you talked about, outside of even just UPS and FedEx, that there are other just independent or tell me a little bit about how somebody sources that. How do you even find all of these smaller independent final mile or package parcel type delivery companies? Where do they exist?
A lot of them are spawned from larger companies, so it's folks that have a great idea. They work for a larger company and they think we can do it better, in some of the more consolidated zip code areas. A lot of it, I think, is through LinkedIn. There's a lot of information on LinkedIn about who's doing what in the industry and how you can contact them, because really they're running lean. It really just takes, any kind of networking, trade show events.
Yeah.
I've done a ton of trade show events. I really like the networking events. Not only do you meet a lot of customers, but you meet a lot of other people in the space that are doing things, and they're doing things differently. And I think networking means something so much more. How are you doing it in today's market? What's working for you? What's working for your customers? And what are the customers really expecting?
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, if you think about the independent drivers, the one-off, one truck, two truck, three trucks that are delivering just truckload freight, well, the same thing can happen on the parcel side. And I'm certain that there are companies that are consolidating, looking for ways to be able to locate, find, and verify the information on those carriers and find ways to be able to work together. And every person looking to ship a package is not going to go aggregate that information. So having folks like yourself and folks that are in the industry that are willing to kind of put the boots on the ground and do the work to figure out how to aggregate that information and find the better resources, those are going to be a benefit to the customer. And everyone has the same problem. How do I get my stuff to my buyers at the best possible rate so that I can continue to make a good living? And I think that happens on both sides of the equation, the person that's delivering it and the person that's selling it. And I said both sides, but I have to put a third side in. Somebody bought it and somebody's got to receive it. So,
well, as a consumer, I know that I don't want to pay for shipping. Yeah. It's one thing when I know that it's rolled into the cost of goods, but if I see a cost of shipping on a customer's website, that leads me to look other places for it, even if it's a little bit more expensive. So as consumers, I think that helps us help our customers be smarter in how they're shopping for shipping options. The common carriers, FedEx and UPS, have made it very difficult for customers to understand their 75-page pricing agreements, and then likewise their 300-page invoice agreements that don't have headers on them. Uh-oh. And so I think the common carriers are doing that on purpose, but they're also getting smarter. They're taking packages that they want to take. They're making increases throughout the year that we haven't seen before. UPS is actually slated for another zone change here in March, just 3 months after the annual GRI. Wow. And even though that annual GRI is 5%, 5.9% this year, some of the surcharges are actually as high as 20%.
Wow. Explain to everyone who doesn't know what a GRI is, what that means.
A general rate increase. So
we don't want those.
We don't want those. No, we don't. And there's some shippers and companies that are savvy enough to be able to negotiate caps on that so that they don't have to pay that 5.9%. The caps can be a lower percent than that that's set for a couple years in place. And it helps shippers maintain what their cost of sale of goods is. Sure. But these regional carriers are coming in with flat rate pricing, more aggressive pricing, and so if a good percentage of your business lies in the zip codes that they're servicing, it makes it really streamlined.
Yeah, I like it. Well, I mean, options are always the answer to how to make most things easier, right? Being able to have more opportunities to make sure you can find the right fit. It's like anything else. You typically need about 1 million things when you're a business, but every one of your customers needs one or two things. But you got to have it all to be able to service that one little bank of needed services or products or whatever it happens to be for that individual customer. So I'm going to slide out of this a little bit, and I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go back. I was thinking of shipping, and I was thinking how difficult it might be to ship something to you, Liz, and I'll tell you why that is. Because checking on LinkedIn, I saw that you are from 2 states at the same time. Because your home city is Wyoming, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to have to protest that because I get really confused when I see 2 states lined up like that. So tell us about Wyoming, Pennsylvania.
There's not much to tell, Brian. Wyoming, Pennsylvania is a very small, I don't even know if it could be considered a city, in between Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
I like it. Hey, we all know where in Scranton, isn't that where the office?
That's where, yeah. That's where.
How do you not love that?
That's been my territory for the last 15 years. And I hadn't watched the show initially. And then I felt obligated after so many customers were so passionate about it. And now it's just on repeat in the house.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny how all the older shows are the ones you usually wind up kind of stuck on.
So good. I don't think half that content would be allowed today.
No, that's very true. Yeah, they probably haven't listened to it in a while. Yeah, but in the interest of fairness, I did take a little peek on the internet because I have nothing else to do, and I found that there are some other state cities. There's Virginia City, Nevada, Kansas City, Missouri, which I think everybody knows. There's a Florida, Massachusetts, which normally I try not to pronounce Massachusetts publicly, but I think I got away with that one okay. There's a New York, Texas, an Ohio, Texas, a Pennsylvania, Texas is really confusing.
They ran out of...
Yeah, they ran out of ideas somewhere. I feel like I want to get them that name the baby book or something and send it over, see if they can come up with some new names for that. Anyway, sorry about the detour, folks. We'll get back to logistics now. Your regular program already in progress. So we talked about some of the things that have happened in the industry, and I didn't completely go down the road. I know you talked about AI a little bit, but talk about how technology in general has kind of bled into the parcel part of logistics, and where you think there's been some improvements, where you think things are maybe for the future exciting, or maybe even now getting a little exciting.
Sure. I think the main thing would be the transportation management systems that have the dynamic rating for multiple carriers. So rather than the end user actually making the decision on how to ship, the computer's actually doing it based on your negotiated rates. That's been the first thing. Then there's contract negotiation analytics, there's audit analytics. There's so many ways that companies can provide value using the data that you already have from the carriers. So
I like it. I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, 15 years ago in our industry, it was somebody sending out about 20 emails trying to figure out what is the best price to move X to Y. Now you can consolidate that information, use a single piece of technology to source all of it, and hopefully take advantage of somebody's consolidated buying power at the same time, and have a few people on the backside of that, since you are doing business with them, that can, to your point, do the audits, make sure that mistakes aren't being made, because we know no one ever makes mistakes. And
distribution location, where your DC should be located, based on what your customer base is located, kind of like what our EVOS tool offers, route optimization, consolidation. It's all the same for the mode of parcel.
I like it. And you mentioned EVOS, which I know is a product there at BlueGrace. And when we talk about order level optimization, that's how we started the conversation. It's who cares what mode of transportation it is. I need to look at the number of units that you have, find out when it's got to be, where it's got to go, and find out the best mode for that. And being able to include all of those, including parcel, is a integral part. Did I say that word right? Milvia, my producer, is looking at me now to see if I just said integral correctly. Part of making sure that you're shipping as smartly as possible, to the point you made earlier, shipping smarter. So love that. And I did want to touch a little bit on sustainability. That seems to be a key buzzword now, and I won't buzz on it too much, but talk to me a little bit about sustainability in the parcel industry and what things are being done. I know there's all types of initiatives with different companies and tax credits that existed for carbon reduction. What are some of the things that you see in that sustainability lane that affect parcel small pack?
Well, obviously, as you mentioned, the electric delivery fleets are probably one of the largest. Packaging, green insulation, different ways to make packaging renewable. Sure. And even AI-driven, the route optimization that cuts back on fuel and CO2 emissions. So those are, across the board in all modes of transportation, I think the top sustainability efforts being made by most of the major companies.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's amazing how easy it actually is if you do have technology, because to your point, when you have things that are determining that you have 100 orders that are going from origin A to origin B. If we don't apply a little bit of logic to that, and that winds up being 100 shipments individually traveling from A to B, then that's a different footprint than 20, because you looked at the logic of when does it need to leave, when does it need to be there, which of these orders can be combined. Let's do something a little bit heavier, which reduces our our cost per shipment anyway. So you got two different kinds of green that you're saving there, right?
Yeah.
You got the green initiative and a little bit of that back in your wallet. So always happy to
Have both.
To have a little bit of both for sure. So, we've talked about a lot of things today, Liz, and when we talk about strategy in parcel, it's just like strategy in the rest of logistics, right? How do we reduce the cost from A to B? And sometimes it's not even just reducing the cost, right? It's how do we make our product more attractive to the end buyer? Well, anytime you can reduce the landed cost of goods, it's going to be more interesting whether you're selling it into Walmart, Amazon, to individual consumer. And I love that you've got strategies that revolve around taking advantage of all modes, making sure that we can take advantage of consolidation. We can, like the point you made earlier, we can place freight in the right location, right? If you've got 20 different storefronts that the freight could have already been sitting in instead of one distribution center that's 400 miles away, maybe those stores would be the best distribution center for that couple of shipments that are going to go out to those areas. So be strategic. Have a company do an analysis. Look at the coordinate data for all your shipments and figure out the best way to place the freight. So, Liz, this has been a lot of fun getting to know you today, and this has been a lot of fun learning about small pack from you and all the things that we can do strategically in our supply chains. And I hope we get to do this again. And I promise you next time I won't pick on Wyoming, Pennsylvania so much. Although, in the interest of fairness, I used to have an office in right outside of Philly. And what's the
Conshohocken?
No. I'm having a senior moment and not remembering it. King of Prussia. Thank you so much. You got it. Had an office in King of Prussia. I only went there maybe once a month, but had an office in King of Prussia. So I'm fairly familiar with that part of the country.
Slightly larger than Wyoming, Pennsylvania.
Slightly larger than Wyoming, Pennsylvania, but also colder than Tampa, Florida. So I'm glad I'm here.
Yes.
So Liz, before we finish up today, talk to that small shipper. It's got a small business. They're trying to improve and they're trying to figure out a strategy. Talk to me about what we can do to make it better for them.
The strategy really depends on the individual customer's needs, Brian. What are they shipping? How are they doing it today? What areas are they looking to improve? As far as what we can help them with, it's an array from audit, transportation, insight management, reporting. There's so many different variances, strategies. I like to look at every customer independently, understand exactly what their business model is, and then take it from there. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all shopping model when it comes to logistics or when it comes to the right partner or even carrier. So what you're doing today might not fit with you when you're growing, might be a totally different scenario next year, and you want to find the right partner that fits that model.
That's great advice. I mean, and it sounds like it should be a continuing improvement process. Like those discussions should continue to happen. And speaking of discussions, thank you so much for having this one with me here today. And we look forward to having the next one. So listen, everyone, thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you for being here today. We'll have another one of these out next Tuesday, so make sure to listen, and we'll see you next time. That's a wrap.